for the issue with the technology. So without any delay, I'll just move on to our first speaker, the Honorable Professor Ratan Lal. Over to you, sir. You can share your screen. We should be able to make you presenter. Just a second. So I'll stop sharing my screen and then.
Yeah, that will help.
Yes,
Thank you. That was my one problem.
Thank you.
Can you see anything on the screen?
Yes, we can. Yes, we
Okay.
can.
Okay.
Did you not want to start with your we're seeing? Yeah, there you go.
Okay, I'm going to go to number 1.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so you can see the screen now, I suppose. Thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity, and I want to begin by thanking Dr. Khalid Mahmood, Dr. Shahid Mansoor, Dr. Tina Barsby, Ms. Gulzar Khan, Professor Iqrar Ahmad. Thank you, each one of you, for the opportunity to talk to you. Today is the World Food Day. Food being the most basic of human right, I think it's a very important topic of discussion. And I want to begin with the Indus Valley civilization, why it disappeared about 1300 BCE. It flourished for about 2000 years. And there are many theories why it disappeared: invasion by Aryans, climate change about 2000 BC in the Indus Valley, leading to change in many, especially the rainfall, became drier. Change in course of the river, Ghaggar and Harka, leading to aridization around 2000 BC. The fact is that the original home of the Indus civilization today is a desert. And there may be perhaps an important lesson to learn from this aridization of a very robust civilization of its era. Pakistan has a very impressive improvement in crop yields of wheat, rice, paddy, gone up by a factor of 3 or 4 in each of crop yield, which is very remarkable progress. And the per capita food grain production has gone up as well. Agricultural land area, though, is progressively going to decrease to maybe as little as 0.1 hectare or less for arable land, and the same thing for pastoral land and irrigated land. One thing which we need to consider, the population of urban cities is going up tremendously. Population of Karachi between 1950 and 2030 will go up by a factor of 23. Lahore by 16, Rawalpindi by 17, Multan by 15, Faisalabad by 32, Gujranwala, something I have close association with, by a factor of 32. Fertilizer production is gradually going up, but the fertilizer efficiency, especially of nitrogen, probably is about 25-30%, compared to US maybe 40-45%. One of the reasons for the low fertilizer use efficiency and low crop yield is the low soil organic matter content. Ideally, soil organic matter content should be somewhere between 2 and 3%. Most soils of Pakistan, Punjab region, probably around 0.5, and sometimes less. The biomass burning, especially of rice residue this time of the year, is an issue that need to be looked at. So somewhere we should think about CNPK, carbon coming before NPK. That if we have more organic matter in the soil, the need for NPK will become less because its efficiency will increase. So the slogan should be CNPK. That goes back to not burning the crop residue. Soil erosion problem in Punjab, recorded literature I have seen goes back to 1940. Dr. Glover, who made some evaluation of serious erosion hazard affecting quite a lot of people even at that time. And erosion problem in the hilly areas still continues quite seriously, affecting 17 million hectare of wind erosion, 9, chemical degradation, waterlogging, Waterlogging because of flood irrigation. Indus Valley civilization used flood irrigation. We are still using it, and I think that's a time to change. Drainage causes problem. So erosion, once again, a very serious secondary salinization. Irrigated land becoming saline is also quite serious, affecting almost 6 million hectare. Land area affected by desertification throughout. Again, going back to Indus Valley civilization, we should learn lesson that aridization should somehow be minimized, and water productivity in these environment is really the key factor. With flood irrigation, that's a wasteful use of water. The water productivity, that means production per unit use of water, is less. Somehow we must increase the green water supply in the root zone. That goes back to, again, the question of improving organic matter content from 0.5%, hopefully to 1.5 to 2%. Water resources are different kinds. We have blue water, which means groundwater, river water, rainwater, so forth. We have gray and black water, that's water contaminated by human use. And green water is actually the water in the root zone of soil. Somehow we have to improve that capacity. We must recycle gray and black water as much as we can around the urban areas, because urbanization, as I said, is improving. And then there's a fourth water, which is virtual water, water embedded in the product, like rice, wheat, corn, cotton, whatever. And if it's exported, virtual water from a dry climate, we should very carefully think we are essentially exporting water. There are several types of drought. We should know what they are. First of all, flood and drought are two sides of the same coin. When there's a more flood, subsequently there'll be more drought. Drought can be meteorological, decrease in precipitation over time. Drought can be hydrological, decline in groundwater, river, reservoir, those kind of things. It can be pedological when soil water storage capacity decreases. And most part of Pakistan, especially the Punjab area, has a problem of pedological drought because of low available water capacity. Agronomic drought happens when the drought is critical at flowering stage, growth of corn or crop, wheat and rice. Ecological, when water availability because of land use conversion, millennium, and of course we have sociological drought when people do not use it properly. Identifying which type of drought, especially if it's pedological and agronomic or metallurgical and hydrologic, can help us manage the drought. That brings me to the question, while the Green Revolution has happened, which is very much a success story, we should think about other ways of Green Revolution. Our soils are degraded, being desertified, so our revolution from now on should be soil-based, on soil resilience, ecosystem-based, on eco-efficiency, and knowledge-based on science and management. Today's a food day. I want to next take a few minutes on food issues. All things are connected in nature. Therefore, health of soil, plants, animal, people, ecosystem, and the planet is one and indivisible. That interconnectivity is very important. Globally, this problem of interconnectivity, and in Pakistan also with high population growth rate, developing a resilient food system really matter. And a healthy soil with high organic matter content should look like this. And when a soil is healthy, all other things, water, climate, food, biodiversity, depend on soil health. Therefore, although the Green Revolution was seed-based, from now onward, it should be soil and ecosystem-based, for which organic matter content is very important. I'd like to also mention that human health, which is a fingerprint of soil health, can also be improved by restoration of soil health, especially if the soils are polluted and contaminated and degraded. And this link between soil health and human health is very critical. I might dare say that human well-being is a mirror image of the soil land they live on. If soil and land is degraded, human health, unfortunately, is also degraded. Therefore, restoration of soil health is very important. Switching to a healthier diet, I want to mention that because as people become richer, more affluent, they have a tendency to have more animal-based diet. And moderation is the key thing. Excess can be quite serious because animal-based diet have few additional issues, including gaseous emissions, which need to consider. Resilient food systems are those which can withstand the shock and bounce back. COVID-19 is a shock. Therefore, improving local food systems, urbanization, that means urban agriculture. But whatever system we have, they must be pro-nature and they must support the interconnectivity and the holism on which the diet also depends. There's a saying that let food be the medicine and medicine be the food. That was Hippocrates about 400 BC. Good food is a good medicine. Even now, medical doctors say that. So improving nutritional value of food, that means agriculture becoming nutrition sensitive, is important to human diet. I took a liberty of citing few things from Quran this morning. And here are the surah and verses. Eat what is lawful and good in earth. Good food includes honey, and I give you the citation from where they came from, vegetables such as corn and herbs, and fruits such as olive, dates, grapes, pomegranates, and bananas. And eat and drink and do not commit excess. Indeed, he, God, I suppose, does not love those who are excessive. So moderation is the mention. And last slide I want to share with you is what Quran has to say about soil. And why I say that is because many of our farmers who may not be very literate, they certainly listen to the verses in Quran every Friday when they go to the mosque. So what does Quran say? One says, he created the man of clay, like the potters, and clay obviously is the soil. We made from water every living thing. Water is the basic component of productivity in dry climate. Conserving water, improving its efficiency, that's what our scriptures say. Do not overuse water even if you are on a running river. That says all what anybody can say in a dry climate. So I think we should all go back to our roots and follow what the scriptures say and combine them with modern science, and we should be doing fine. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you, and I'll be glad to share with the discussion when the opportunity comes.
Thank you so much, Professor Ratan Lal. Amazing. Thank you so much. The way you have described the challenges of the agriculture in Pakistan is amazing. And I was surprised to see the population of Karachi, the way it's going to be in next 10 years. Yeah,
it is so amazing that a city of 10 million requires 6,000 tons of food a day. So imagine if a city has a 25 million, all that food coming into the city and the waste becoming liability. We must plan urban, peri-urban agriculture by recycling black gray water back into food. So urban agriculture should really become a very important component in rapidly growing cities.
That's for sure. And then in Karachi, there was a cattle colony established back in 1960. Now they are in the middle of the city, and then the city is around it. So that's again, I mean, their wastage could be used for agriculture. So that's a whole organic material. So we will hold back from the questions. I think because we're just running out of time. I'll just move on to our next speaker. Thank you so much again on behalf of Comstech, who has organized this event for today. So thank you very much. We'll revert back to you with the questions. Thank you. I'm just going to the next speaker, Dr. Tina Barsby. Over to you, Dr. Tina Barsby. Dr. Tina Barsby is she's the director of NAYAB, and she's a good friend of Pakistan, I would say. And she has visited Pakistan 3 years ago. And that part's me.
So hello to our colleagues and friends, and also new colleagues and friends. And thank you very much to the organisers for inviting me to talk to you today. Next slide, please. So population growth has already been mentioned. It's clearly not slowing down and won't slow down for many, many years. So next slide. And it's still the case that if we want to be able to feed all of these people, we need to increase the yields of crops. Yes, we need to be concerned about nutritional quality, but absolute yield is important, particularly to the individual farmer on his or her farm. You know, for them, yield is everything. It affects their economics, their livelihoods, and therefore that's why I'm not ashamed to talk about yield, even though I know that nutrition is very important. The yields of our major crops are increasing by around 1% a year due to the efforts of our plant breeders, but that needs to double in order to reach the yields that we will need to feed the projected population by 2050. Next slide, please. So I looked at a definition of resilience, and it was defined as the propensity of a system to retain its organizational structure and productivity following a perturbation. And so a resilient agroecosystem will continue to provide a vital service such as food production when challenged by extremes of drought, temperature, rainfall, new pest and disease threats. And boy, do we have some challenges ahead. Next slide, please. Climate change, clearly temperatures are going up. Rainfall is going down in some places and up in others. And it was very interesting to see the reference to agronomic drought, because, you know, there are big differences between the Punjab in Pakistan and the United Kingdom. And one of the big ones that we could point to is rainfall. But we do have a problem with agronomic drought in many of our crops, with water not being available at the right time. And this year that has affected crop yields in the UK. They've been down by around 30%, and I'm sure that agronomic drought has been part of the problem. Next slide, please. I wanted to say something about our science centre. So NIAB has come together with the University of Cambridge. NIAB is based in Cambridge and also in East Malling in Kent, where we do research on fruit. So we've come together with the University of Cambridge to play our part in addressing these agricultural challenges and to ensure that agriculture remains productive and that the benefits are accessible to all farmers. Next slide, please. Because farming is very different depending on where you are. The challenges might be the same, but the purpose of your farm, whether it's on a small scale to feed your family or whether it's on a very large scale to go into the global production, are very different. But nevertheless, the same principles still apply. And next slide. We've already mentioned that you can improve on farm efficiency. Professor Ratan Lal mentioned this, that you can increase soil carbon through farm management practices. So you can incorporate cover crops, you can integrate grass and herbal layers into your rotation, you can switch to crops which require low inputs, and you can reduce soil compaction. And all of these help to maintain good soil health and are effective methods of reducing and offsetting greenhouse gases. And we shouldn't forget that when people talk about greenhouse gases. There's a discussion in the UK at the moment about covering half the country with trees to capture carbon. We shouldn't forget that agriculture and food production itself can actually mitigate some of the problems of greenhouse gases. Next, please. So it's interesting to note that the use of fertilizer seems to track the increase in the population. And I guess that's because of the need to produce more and more food for those people. But we also know that this dependency on fertilizer cannot continue. The stocks of some of the compounds from which we extract our fertilizer are going down, and we know that nitrogen fertilizer, the production of nitrogen fertilizer is one of the major producers of greenhouse gases. So one way or another, we need to get away from this trend. The next slide, please. Next slide. So my colleagues at the University in Cambridge, led by Professor Giles Oldroyd, who's the Professor of Crop Science, and Professor Uta Paskowski, they work on signaling processes in plant roots and how plant roots interact with microbes. Most notably, in the case of Giles Oldroyd's work, are looking at nitrogen fixation and rhizobium. And his ultimate goal, he's in his middle 40s, and he says by the time he retires, he wants nitrogen fertilizer to be a thing of the past. And so his aim is to ensure that by the time he retires, rice and wheat will be able to fix nitrogen. But there are some steps along the way that might help us to reduce fertilizer use. So some of the mechanisms they're starting to understand about how plants recruit nitrogen and phosphorus to their roots may give us some more immediate applications. So the next slide. So we've brought these high science groups at the university together with NIAB, and NIAB has a long history in variety testing, variety evaluation. And of course, NIAB is the UK example, but I know that the systems in Pakistan are very, very similar. And in many countries, there are national variety testing systems. In some countries, that variety testing goes on at a very local level. NIAB's been around for over 100 years. It was established to test these UK varieties. And these varieties are tested over multiple years, over different environments, with the goal of helping farmers to select which varieties work best in their fields. And of course, can I have the next slide? It's the next slide, Khalid. And choosing the right variety can have a significant impact on how you use your resources. Yields have continued to rise, even though over the last 10 to 20 years, nitrogen use in the UK has not increased. And you have to remember that because these varieties are being selected over multiple years, the more resilient varieties are favoured by these testing systems. And we publish information on variety performance, as I know many people do globally. So we have a lot of information about the progress of plant variety, the progress of plant breeding over the last few years. Can you see the next slide? And we know that there are still some challenges that plant breeders need help from researchers to address. So we also have a research program, obviously many collaborations, and I think many of the people, those of you in research, will recognize these objectives. So improving the resilience to abiotic and biotic stresses, optimizing productivity, focusing on reducing chemical use, research on legumes to provide solutions to the increased demand for plant-based protein, I think is a really important area that we could spend a whole seminar talking about that. And pioneering the use of new plant breeding technologies. And I know that we're going to hear more about this from Shahid Mansour, later, but I just wanted to say a few things about that later in my talk. Next slide, please. So I want to go back to wheat. It's one of our most important food crops, and it provides 20% of all the calories and protein consumed globally. And I have a CIMMYT logo there. I don't know, some of you may know my colleague, Dr. Alison Bentley. She's just been appointed as the Global Head of Research at CIMMYT. And I very much look forward to her participation in future discussions on this subject. Can we have the next slide? So winter wheat yields in the UK have continued to improve. I think if you click, you'll get another line, but it doesn't. So we have these 4 categories of wheat. Group 1 would be the high quality, what we call the high quality bread making types with high levels of gluten that require high levels of protein to get their gluten levels up. And the group 4, which are the animal feeds, which have a much higher yield. But you can see there's been this steady increase in yield over the last, since 1989, but it goes back even further than that. The next slide. And if you look at the yields on farm, they also rose steadily. There does seem to be some kind of plateau going on at the moment where maybe farmers aren't able to realize the genetic potential of those varieties. Those pictures of wheat heads show you that they each represent 1 decade. So you can see how different wheat has appeared. These are the top varieties on our UK recommended list over the decades. And I think it's fascinating how different they are, and yet they've still driven this increase in on-farm yields. Next slide, please. So I was interested in this global review of genome editing by the Julius Kern Institute. And you will know that gene editing applications are increasing rapidly worldwide. It's something of a frustration in Europe that gene editing has been classed as genetic modification, even though most applications of gene editing are replicates of mutations, and only a small percentage insert heritable foreign DNA, which would be the definition of GM. And many other countries have adopted the Cartagena Protocol definition of genetic modification and don't include gene editing in that assessment. So this review identified applications in 46 different crops, some of the most important crops, and across a wide range of traits. And so I just wanted to show a few examples of what could be done and what is being done. Next slide. So there are examples in disease resistance, some of the most important diseases like citrus canker. Next slide. In agronomic traits, so these are both yield traits, so increasing the size and the weight of the grains, but also when I worked in a laboratory, I worked for many years on pod shatter resistance, and it's quite a complicated trait, but the genes which are involved in pod shattering are well known, and by gene editing, to be able to attenuate pod shatter means that fewer seed are lost at harvest. And it's difficult to find mutations, specific mutations. And I think that's another important aspect of this. It's just the time it takes to breed a new trait into a crop. And we need to have that in our minds all of the time. Next slide. And there are also examples of where food and feed quality, so healthier oil profiles in our oil crops. And next slide. Importantly, stress and climate resilience can also be tackled by these methods. Next slide. So I just wanted a thought at the end. I mean, obviously those are, they appear to be silver bullets to fix some of the problems, but it's not like that. And we need to remember from Dr. Ratanlal's presentation and the presentations that we're going to hear that no one trait works in isolation. They're all part of a system. And we need to bear that in mind. When you change one thing, you're likely to change others as well. And I think we all know, we were talking about cotton before the seminar started, and I think we all know the story of the really successful BT cotton. So then people stop spraying insecticides, and then you have problems with other pests, with whiteflies. So you have to think about the whole system when you introduce a new trait. But I also wanted us to think about this. Timing is everything. Plant breeding is driving yields up. It's not quick enough to cope with global population growth. And genetic solutions are available, but not in the immediate future. So we can't afford to wait for some of these genetic solutions. It'll take too long. If we use the modern techniques, well, that will, like the gene editing and genetic modification, it will speed things up. But we also need to note that we're losing crop protection products. It's becoming more and more difficult for companies to place crop protection products on the market because of safety concerns, and we're losing them because they're being withdrawn from the market because of new concerns about safety. And that, of course, is pushing yields down. So those of us who are trying to help farmers to maximize their yield and to provide a secure supply of safe food need to manage that transition, because it's going to get more difficult to grow and protect our crops without these products. I mean, I believe in a genetic future, but it will take some time. So next slide. Again, our Crop Science Centre, we had our official launch last week. And if you go to the website, you'll be able to see the launch video. I hope you do. And we are very interested in collaborating with other people who have the same goals as we do. So again, thank you very much. I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tina. It's really helpful to understand from various perspectives the gap in the production yield coming from genetics, issues from new pests and diseases. And on the top, I mean, how do we produce food that meets our nutrition requirements? It's a dichotomy at the moment. 1.9 billion people are obese. So something is missing in our food. So that's another big question we need to ask. I'll just move on to our next speaker, and we'll open up the discussions later on. So thank you so much again. Thank you. So our next speaker is Dr. Shahid Mansoor. He's the director of NIPG in Pakistan. So he's one of the, I would say, great fan of new technologies. So I'm just going to find his presentation first of all. So maybe just a second. His presentation gone. So maybe, meanwhile, maybe if there's any question, maybe you can just get one question for a quick sort of turnaround. Any quick question here? Maybe Professor Iqra, you want to ask a question here by the time I open up slides for...
I have a very strong feeling about the discussion that has gone in, both from Professor Lal and Tina. I must tell you that I find it very emotionally charged event for last 1 hour. I had the opportunity of sitting with 2 World Food Prize winners in the past, and today I'm privileged to listen to the third one. I hosted Professor Swaminathan in Faisalabad, and we gave him honorary doctorate. And if I ever have an opportunity to do it again, I will offer that to Professor Ratan Lal. I have also had multiple opportunities of interacting with Vikram Gill, another World Food Prize winner. And today, I feel extremely delighted to listen to Professor Ratan Lal. Professor Saab, three ideas in your talk are very close to my heart. One is of peri-urban agriculture, and the places that you mentioned which are close to your heart. Gujranwala, which was maybe a mid-sized town at the time of partition, it has about 20 similar towns in that district now.
Yes.
So to me, the peri-urban is actually dominating the rural now, and all those small adda towns have become little towns, and then from little to bigger towns. So urbanization is reshaping itself, and the migration at current pace, if you include those adda towns, more than 50% population is already living in urban and peri-urban areas. So a new paradigm in agriculture that is being overlooked. We are overwhelmed by the challenge of growing 5 crops, actually 4 crops, which are wheat, cotton, rice, and sugarcane. And we are missing out on an opportunity to diversify. In Tina's talk, there is a reminder that we have crisis because of greenhouse gases emissions, and worldwide wheat is only 20% of the calorie contributor, whereas in the subcontinent or in Pakistan part or northern part of subcontinent, I think it is probably 60 to 80% of the calories. So the lack of diversification is one of the reasons for poor diets. But I fully agree with Professor Lal that our healths are reflected in the health of soil. What we are growing, we are eating that. So our diets are only as good are our soils. And what is missing in our soil equation with soil and crops is legumes. We hardly grow any legumes. And we are growing exhaustive crops. We are into 150% of cropping intensity. We are not allowing regeneration of soil, and then, of course, the organic matter is missing. So I don't want to, spend a whole lot of time in between the talks, but I'm simply delighted and would like to let the audience know that the Nobel Prize went to World Food Program, which is actually a reminder to my mind. It's not that we have done a big job, but it went to World Food Program because there was COVID, and there is about a billion population in the world which goes hungry, and World Food Program was running after them with food. So it is a reminder then to be a celebration for us, all of us who are really concerned about food security of the masses. CRISPR-Cas is the opportunity, as Dr. Tina Barsby has said, that the future is genetics, and CRISPR-Cas another Nobel Prize. So last week, 2 Nobel Prizes are reminder and opportunity. And today, we are very delighted that on the occasion of World Food Day, we're discussing these important issues. So I will not pose any questions. The presentations were outstanding, and I'm hoping for another good one. Shahad is also a very good speaker. So let's Shahad speak.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Khalid, and all the organizers for inviting me to speak. And I'm very delighted that we had before me Dr. Ratan Lal and Dr. Tina from NIAB, who have I think that they have set the stage, and then Dr. Ikras up. What I'm trying to do is that my presentation has been made very easy because of the presentation made earlier. So the question is that we need to the two big breakthrough that we had in agriculture in Pakistan came from the technology. And one was the green revolution technologies, in 60s, and then hybrid corn, which has revolutionized production. So what we are looking forward is that we need another revolution And as pointed out by Dr. Tina, that we need multiple interventions, because the challenge of climate change is a big challenge, and then and it's very complex. So on one side you have drought, and then salinity, and then you have a lot of rain or no rain and flooding. So I think that and then temperature, rise of temperature. So what we need is that we need to increase the increase the rate of genetic gain. And we published in 2019 a paper in Science highlighting that the importance of these technologies to developing world, including Pakistan. And we proposed the solution, and we proposed that we use technologies, and also our CGIAR system and the international collaboration is essential to make sure that we have good genetic gain. One very important progress that has been made very impressive is about genomics. And this is because because of the technologies that have speeded up the whole genome sequencing. These are called next generation sequencing technologies. And now there are markers and genes available that we can select, and this is for not only to increase the yield, but also disease resistance. Nutritional value is very, very important in quality. And these traits, because of the multiple genes which are involved, and all the technologies, and then because of the improvement in technologies, we are able to use these genomics for genomic selection. And this is really very advanced in livestock. It's just like you can breed by design. And the use of genomics in crop is catching up, and very impressive progress has been made, and these technologies are being available. So what we are proposing in this genomics is that we develop our own chips for the major crops which are grown in Pakistan, and provide as a centralized facility. The next, can you go back please for 1 minute? And the other thing that is the genome editing, and I think that I'm not going to speak about this because Tina has covered this. Now another very important is that to reduce the time of developing a variety from 8 to 10 years to about 2 to 3 years. And this is possible because now we can, because of the speed breeding facilities, we can have multiple generation in a year. And these are all the technologies that are going to help us in genetic gain. Now my next and the last slide is about the livestock. Dr. Professor Ratan Lal has pointed about going back to the roots. In old days, if you have grains and if you have livestock, you could manage your food. And now what is happening is that we have a large number of animal heads, but the productivity is very low. And especially when you talk about nutritional deficiency in children, women, and then vulnerable section of the society, you find that milk is probably one of the, and milk product, dairy products, which are very essential part of our diet. It has been very important. So what we need to do is actually increase the yield, and this is possible because of the availability of genomic selection tools. And it has grown to the level that you can actually predict that how much yield you are going to have, the productive life, and quality of milk, including the percentage of fat and protein. So I think that if we have not worked really on genetics, it was a topic of one of the seminar which was arranged by Pakistan Academy of Sciences. And I think that this is one of the important application. And what we need to do is actually work with all the stakeholders, because no single agency can do this. We need to have all the collaborators, international collaborators, and national collaborators to work in those areas, and to really bring the diversity the use of legumes and milk and dairy product into our diet. And with this, I thank again to all the speakers, to the all organizers for giving me this opportunity to speak. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shahid, giving an insight to the challenges faced by the food security in Pakistan, but as in the technologies, their application in the region. And just to remind, because today's event is being seen in more than 50 countries, because this has been hosted by Comstech. So Comstech has a regional presence in Africa, in I would say East Asia, Asia, and also places in South America as well. So just to sort of, I think we are running out of time. We thought we're going to finish this webinar in 1 hour. So I'll just ask one or two important questions here. So maybe if I give back the mic back to Professor Iqra to coordinate those questions or any.
Okay, thank you, Khalid. If there are any questions from the audience, they can raise hand or. Okay, what it is in the chat box? Is this sustainability? Which one is that? Okay, can you read it? Just read it. Read the question.
The question says, is this reality that sustainability and food security are trade-off for each other, meaning agriculture intensification and green revolution is considered to deteriorate our natural resources and environment?
Well, this is a question that will have probably no solid answer, but we will throw it before our panel, our speakers. That can we be food secure without damaging the ecosystem? This is the basic question. So we can get a quick answer from our speakers. Ecosystem and food security are incompatible, or can we make them compatible? Tina, first you, and then we can ask Professor Ratan Lal.
Well, you know, we hear this a lot, don't we? We hear that the Green Revolution was really driven by fertilizers, but I don't think it was. It was driven by genetics, and I think we can have a food secure future. And I think we need to accelerate our genetic work, our plant breeding, to enable us to use less fertilizer. But I think there can be a balance. I do believe there can be a balance.
Okay, so this is a sustainability question also, not just that we have to look forward to meeting the current requirements, but also to look at what will happen in 2050 when we will have 10 billion people to be fed. Professor Lal Saab.
Yes, sir. Yes, I agree with what Tina said. We certainly can have both improved environment as well as improved food and nutrition security. There is certainly ways to decrease fertilizer use. I mentioned already, use efficiency is low, especially in South Asia, and increasing soil organic matter content. I gave the slogan of C NPK rather than NPK, so C comes before NPK. That will decrease the fertilizer dependence. Also, I think you mentioned 10 billion people by 2050. We already produce enough food to feed 10 billion people. 3 billion tons of grains are produced every year. 1 billion tons of grains do not reach any stomach, human or animal. They are wasted. So producing more and wasting more is not a good option. I think saving the food from wastage is a lot better strategy than producing more. I think we should really, I'm really disappointed so much driving from Delhi to Amritsar. I see the pyramids of bags of wheat and rice under plastic sheets rotting after one rainfall. 5 million tons of grains. I think wasting food, doesn't matter how, is a crime against nature. So we should use food properly first rather than keep producing more. I'm also very disappointed and sad in many ways when I hear we need another 500 million hectare to feed people by 2050. Absolutely not. If we produce food better from existing land, we can double most of the crop yield I showed today for Pakistan easily, maybe even 3 times some of the crops. Why expand more? Why deforest more? We must return back to nature more land and water. Human being just one species out of 8.7 million, taking 40% of the productivity, is being greedy. We have to change our values and our thinking. Food wastage is not something which is acceptable. We must do whatever we can to use better food, what we produce.
Very well said, sir. I absolutely agree with you. Our official statistics are that we are willing to accept that open Ganges under plastic with 15 to 20% grain losses. जो हम मानते हैं कि है. Then in perishable commodities, the average losses are 40% plus. So there's opportunity to contain these losses than putting in more inputs and becoming more intensive. Shah, do you want to add anything?
I think that I agree with both Tina and Professor Ratan Lal, but I will say that I as a student of science, I believe that science has been very helpful in for food security, and we continue that the progress made by in our genomics and other technologies are very mind-boggling, and I'm sure that we are going to have big breakthroughs. I mean, we have recently some farmers that are showing that instead of 30 mounds of rice per acre, we have now varieties that can produce 100 plus. So I think that with a genetic gain, so we are going to, and also very well said by Professor Ratan Lal that we don't need to increase the area. We just need to work in a coordinated way and increase more area under legumes so that we restore the soil. Thank you very much.
Okay, I would like to throw another discussion point, and we'll ask our honorable speakers to add value to that. First of all, Professor Ratan's area, that do we have any magic prescription to increase soil organic matter, knowing very well what this agriculture in Punjab is like in both sides of the border? And then any brilliant idea how to increase area under legumes, and particularly why can't we have soybean as a kharif crop instead of rice, corn, cotton, sugarcane? Or are there easier solutions for that?
Thank you. Maybe I'll begin. Our organic matter content in soils of Punjab, both sides of the border, is very low. In fact, I have seen 0.1%, 0.2%. And I did my MS degree at Ludhiana, and I monitored soil organic matter at that time, 1.5%. So in last 50 years, it has gone down tremendously. Problem is we take away all the crop residue. Turi is given to cattle to eat, and then the dung is not brought back, and the residues are either grayed or burnt. So soil is like a bank account. Bank account, if you want to increase, you must have deposition more than what you withdraw. And soil organic matter is the same thing. Many times people say we cannot increase in dry, arid climate. It is true, it is hard, but you have to add things more into the soil than you withdraw. Crop residue must go back to the land. I have been suggesting grains for people, residue for the land. This equity has to be maintained. And then putting legume in the rotation, your idea, Professor Ikrar, is very good. Even if you put the straw back, the rice straw, carbon nitrogen ratio may be 100, 120. Organic matter stable has a carbon nitrogen ratio of 10, 12. So nitrogen has to come from somewhere. And the legume is the part. You mentioned soybean. I have no problem against soybean, but our native is chickpea, chana. both desi and kabli.
Yes.
They are our soybean, and they are very suited to those environment. Soybean, it is places pretty hot for soybean, but chickpea, pigeon pea, arhar, those our native legumes, they are really very good, deep rooted. They should be. I think the rice wheat system has really upset the whole thing. You mentioned rice in an arid, dry climate, flooded rice is not really the best option. I would rather take 10-15% less yield of rice, uh, but grow aerobic, grow direct seeded and not flooded. Use irrigation just like rice, just like we do wheat. Yes, yield be less, but then save whatever we produce. I think we have to learn how to save natural resources and not waste. While I'm at that point, afforestation of the lower Shivalik hills, all the way from Afghanistan border to the maybe Cambodia, are denuded. 50 years ago, we used to go our agricultural tour to the hills. Hills were covered by trees and forests. Now they're all gone. Afforestation will avoid flooding, which is causing havoc throughout South Asia. And that takes a generation. So somewhere we have to think returning land back to nature, afforestation of the hilly areas, and saving water and land for nature. When we work against nature, nature takes a revenge from us, one way or the other.
Very well said. Yeah, Tina?
That's exceptionally well put. I can't really add anything to that. I mean, we hear about the land sharing, land sparing debate. Do we grow more food on a smaller area and then hand back to nature the land that we're not using for food production? I think there's another aspect that we need to consider, and that's how we incentivize the farmer. Because what I was thinking when I was putting my presentation together is when you're an individual farmer, you're incentivized quite often to produce as much as you can. And that leads to overuse of fertilizers, overuse of pesticides, drawing water when you shouldn't be doing it. And I think that's something that governments need to consider. How do they incentivize farmers? And in Europe at the moment, there are schemes whereby farmers are paid to encourage wildlife in certain ways. And as the UK is now leaving the European Union, we're having a look again at that. So how do we encourage farmers to be custodians of the land rather than just producing more and more and more food?
Maybe I could add to Tina what you just said. We can also begin to reward farmer for growing carbon in soil, farming carbon, grow carbon in soil and pay them for carbon sequestration through payment for ecosystem services. I have been suggesting a price of $30 per ton of CO2 sequestered in soil or trees. And that's a crop. And it has to become a crop globally. And the best place to really start that as a crop and pay farmer is South Asia, because our soils and hills are so depleted. And it's a win-win-win option, going that payment to farmer for ecosystem services, not subsidy, not charity, not handout, not donation. You do this and you'll get paid.
It's a carbon credit, actually.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
And I could call it carbon farming. So you're farming carbon and then you can sell it to industry market the same way as we sell wheat, rice.
Agreed. Well, our government has an ambitious plan of 10 billion trees tsunami, and at least there is realization that we need to plant 10 billion trees. I did some basic math on 10 billion trees. We have more land, which we call as culturable waste or rangelands or land which is not under any kind of direct farming operations. And if those lands are properly designed and then our railway lines the canal banks and the river beds. If they are all properly planned and designed, 10 billion tree is not a bigger target. It is
No.
achievable. It's absolutely achievable. Okay, Khalid, as you are time constrained, so maybe you want to introduce the senator and we listen from her.
Okay. Thank you very much, Professor
Okay.
Ikrar.
One moment.
Yes, please.
I want to make a public request to Professor Lal to make another presentation on organic matter. We will request him separately.
I'll be delighted to. Let me know when.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'd just like to invite our guest of honor for today. Today's honor guest is Ms. Chandana. She's the chair of the Committee on Agriculture in Pakistan National Assembly. And as we were talking about tsunami, the billion tree tsunami things, I think we should be hearing from her. So over to Ms. Chandana Gulzar Khan, please. Unmute yourself.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Saab. Good evening, good afternoon to everyone. My apologies for being a rather useless guest of honor arriving this late. But unfortunately, sometimes sessions of parliament are not kept at our timetables. We were unexpectedly called to session today, which is still happening. I just marked my attendance to my party. We're also answerable, unfortunately, to somebody or the other. But it's been a pleasure listening to all of you. I've been lucky enough to hear all the Q&A. And I must say, I'm incredibly impressed, both with the knowledge and the expertise of Dr. Sahib. So Khalid Saab, I would request you that for future sake, please do keep our committee. We usually have Zoom meetings at least once or twice a week. And I will begin my intervention. I think I have 5 minutes. Is that correct, Dr. Saab?
Please, you have got 5 minutes, yes.
Thank you. So I'll explain a little bit about what it is we're doing in the National Assembly and why we're doing it. As you know, all know in Pakistan, agriculture and food are both a devolved subject now to the provinces. So after the 18th Amendment, it's a little bit difficult for the center to interfere in food and agriculture, as well as labor or women's development, all that are related to farming and agriculture and food. However, what is useful is that the Ministry of Food Security has been kept at the federal level to ensure that the country is able to meet its food needs. Now, some of you may know that Pakistan, India, because of the war in Yemen, as well as the unprecedented attack of locusts and swarms in East Africa, we've been attacked by locusts nearly after 28 years in this part of the world. I'm aware that India and Pakistan, Afghanistan, we're all cooperating through the FAO on trying to keep the locust at bay, but it's been a fairly difficult task. Millions of hectares have been destroyed all over this region, including Eastern Africa. And so the struggle is on. However, what I do in the National Assembly, the Speaker of the National Assembly has set up a special committee called the Special Committee on Agricultural Products in the National Assembly. And that particular committee is supposed to coordinate with all the 4 provinces, GB, AJK, as well as we are talking to international donors. We're talking to advisors. We're talking to other agencies to figure out where we should be in the next 7 years. As a result, we held a huge event on the 12th of March, 2020, and I'm happy, right before the lockdown, I'm happy to share the contents of that document. And if anybody feels they'd like to contribute to it, I would be only too grateful. What I'm doing as the chair of the Subcommittee on Agriculture, we've got some incredibly experienced parliamentarians, Naveed Qamar Sahib, Dr. Aisha Ghaus Pasha, as well as Ahsanullah Tivana. This is a multi-party caucus. We are not a bipartisan government committee. We are a multi-party committee, including the opposition, equality, in fact, and we're trying to bring out an agriculture and food sustainability plan for the next 7 years. We're working in reverse, so 7-year plan, 3-year plan, 1-year plan. Naturally, for the first 1 year, we're looking at the low-hanging fruits, but we're looking at 8 different issues. We're looking at soil health, water health. We're looking at irrigation. We're looking at land uses. Pakistan being one of the countries in this region which has 3 huge mountainous regions going through it, the Himalayas, the Karakoram. So we have to also look at the poorest of the poor, as well as those for whom farming is incredibly difficult. Food security, an even bigger issue because of the harsh winter months over there. We're working on extension services. We're working on cooperatives. We're working on SDG, Sustainable Development Goals related to agriculture. We're working on environmental sustainability. We're looking at soil degradation. We're looking at financing. Financing is the most difficult part for the smallholder farms in Pakistan. And the starting point that we took for our work is that ensuring that the smallholder farmer who is 72% in terms of number in Pakistan and 52% in terms of the land holding. This farmer has been ignored in Pakistan heavily for the last 50 years, but these consequences are felt in wider regions than just being restricted to Pakistan. Our goal is not just food security, it is sustainable food security. And I'm so happy to hear Professor Saab talking about this in some detail. And I would like to request Dr. Khalid to ensure that keep me in the loop whenever you have such events. I'm happy to be a participant. I do not have to be the guest of honor, but we're in a learning stage. And I think perhaps one of the greatest things that has happened in this election in 2018 in Pakistan is that 1/4 of our parliament is under the age of 45. That does not mean that we do not appreciate experience. It simply means we have this dream of Naya Pakistan, new Pakistan, in which innovation is going to be coupled with experience. Unfortunately, our experience in agriculture and food security is not the best. For instance, on cotton, we've had a harsh setback on cotton because sugar, a heavily subsidized product, rice, which takes up a lot of both water and land. These products have eaten up cotton land, the cotton farming land, and a lot of our land has gone for housing projects, which is not the most sustainable use of this land. So in some sense, we're probably in the toughest times for agriculture and food security in Pakistan. COVID was not kind to the world, but we were incredibly lucky that Pakistan was able to put food on the table for its poorest. And our farmers, for the first time, have been given their due recognition that without them, it would have been impossible to keep populations globally alive. And I don't know if this has happened before. There may be some countries in the world, perhaps in Western Europe, that appreciate the farmer for what he or she does. But 70% of women in Pakistan are carrying the burden of food security, and yet their work is neither acknowledged nor paid. This also includes the younger children who come from schools and put in odd jobs. So I'll not explain further in this than what it is I do. I'm happy to answer questions and listen further to all the guests. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Chandana. Thank you so much. Any question from the participants? I think I'm going to take 2 questions, one for Ms. Chandana and one for the panel before we close this session today. Thank you, everybody. Any question here? Maybe I give a chance to Professor Iqrar to ask a question.
Well, I'm very delighted to listen to Ms. Khan and her enthusiasm for agriculture and food security. And we would like to actually get hold of her plans so that we could understand what government is up to and what our political leadership is thinking about the future of agriculture, 1 year, 3 years, 7 years. And I would also like to take this opportunity to let her know that I host weekly agriculture policy debate from the Forum of Pakistan Academy of Sciences. And we'll be very happy to listen to her and invite her to participate in some of those events. We have already done 12 weekly events, and we also do special ones like the one today we are sitting in. The challenge is huge, but I wonder if she was part of the discussion when Professor Ratan Lal raised 2-3 very pertinent avenues for us to look at. Number one is what is happening in terms of wastage, and are we investing in the marketing infrastructure and value addition and processing that we could reduce the losses of produce that we face recurrently. And we have been facing it year after year. I have my simple observations that our infrastructure is insufficient. Number one, farm to market. It's not there, and or it is not effective enough. And then the marketplace itself. Not only infrastructure, but look at the governance, which is something for you to do, ma'am. That we used to have a market act. Aapne pata nahi naam suna ki nahi, there was a person by the name of Chotu Ram.
Yes.
So if you want if you want to learn about marketing in this part of the world, then read the work of Chotu Ram and the legislation which he was able to put through Provincial Assembly in 1930s. The Chotu Ram's marketing scheme of cooperatives, it was cooperative and cooperative banks that has gone to dogs. And every government since 1978, it's not your government. There are 10 different categories of governments which we have come and go. We have seen come and go. First thing they do is they appoint market administrators, not market elected chairpersons, market administrators, which is rent-seeking mechanism. So then we work backwards. So as you are working from 7 years, 3 years, 1 year, please work backwards from market to the peasant, from farm to fork. So work from the fork side, that what havoc we have done with the market governance by appointing market administrators. So बस सिर्फ ये एक पता करने के administrator हम क्यों लगाते हैं, तो बाकी बातें फिर करेंगे इंशाल्लाह.
Inshallah. Thank you so much. If I could just respond, I was lucky enough to listen to Professor Sahib, Professor Ratan Lal Sahib on some points he made, and I was very impressed. And hence my request to the moderator to ensure that anytime Professor Sahib and this group is interacting on such fora, I'd like to be informed and also involve the groups of my, some members from Parliament as well who do this for a living. Thank you so much.
Tomorrow 7 o'clock we will do citrus seedless breeding. किन्नों के ऊपर बहुत शोर मचता है इसमें बीज बड़े हैं. On the request of Federal Minister Fakhr Ahmad and 2 professors from University of California Riverside and 1 professor from Wuhan Agriculture University who have their lifelong experience with citrus genetics. They will be speaking.
I would love to join. Thank you so much.
I think with this note, I would like to say thank you, everybody. Maybe just before going away, I would like to get a piece of advice from Professor Ratan Lal. How do we preserve our nature for our next generation? When I look at my children, they are in the age of 10. So what would be, how would nature look like for them? Will they be able to see some butterflies?
I, first of all, want to really congratulate and commend Ms. Khan. She made a great presentation. With leaders like her, I'm impressed we have a bright future. I was really impressed with your depth of knowledge and the way you expressed. I am not in a position to give any words of wisdom, but to share my experience with you that we as a human being have to really work with nature and protect as much as possible. Putting those 10 billion trees, which was mentioned, should be #1 priority. That's the only way we can stop flood, drought symptoms that we are suffering terribly. Every rainy season, there's a flood. So the hills, anything more than 7% slope is not good for agriculture anyway. So it should be perennial, either perennial crops or trees. Same thing along the roads, against the railway lines, against canals. There should be flood irrigation. We should really stop. That was invented in Indus Valley and Iran and these areas, Mesopotamia area, about 10,000, 8,000 years ago. We are still using it. I would also suggest brick making. Indus Valley civilization was made of bricks. And there is one theory that deforestation for brick making really caused their demise. Somehow we have to find alternative to brick making for soil. We take the topsoil, which took millions of years to make 1 meter, and then we scalp it for brick making. We must do something different. We can, in each village, each district, we can identify a place where you can deeper and deeper rather than scalping the topsoil, which is full of micronutrients, organic matter. So that is one part. The other thing I think I'd like to suggest is that forages should be part of the rotation so that our cattle are fed proper forages and not crop residues. Crop residues, some part of it can be fed to cattle, but it should be really put back on the land to restore soil organic matter content. That is very important. So improve irrigation to micro irrigation, flood irrigation, stop use of topsoil for brick making, put afforestation a very high priority, provide clean cooking fuel to housewives in the villages. That's the only way dung and residue and biomass will be saved for land. Provide clean cooking fuel. So government like Ms. Khan, a very progressive thinking, can help us there. Make agriculture as a part of solution to the environment. That's the key part. Agriculture is blamed as a pollutant, as a, how can you blame agriculture when we cannot do without it? We like to eat 3 times a day. So agriculture, that means farmers, especially small farmers, which she mentioned 70% of them, empower them. And empower them saying, if you do good agriculture, we'll provide you payment for ecosystem services, only if you do it. I think those are some of the practical things. I was delighted to hear Professor Ikrar mentioning about Sir Chotu Ram. He was an example of pro-farmer. Our policies must be pro-farmer. He made banyas and money lenders burn their vaikhatas to get the farmers out of the debt, and he provided them. I think we need those kind of revolution and leader, and I was really pleased with what Ms. Khan had to say. That the kind of leadership we need. Thank you so much. I think I said more than I should have, but those are the things we need to do. Make
Thank you
agriculture.
so much, Professor Ratan Lal. Thank you so much. This is something I would say one of my best day. It's Friday, I would say, listening these words, and this something could be a message for our next generation as well. Thank you so much again for sparing time. I know you have a very busy schedule today. You have two other programs lined up for today with the World Food Program. Once again, thank you so much, and we would like to give a round of applause and congratulations being the winner of Food World Prize this year. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
so much. Dr. Tina, do you want to say anything, or you just want to say just the last word, please? Dr. Tina?
No, I just wanted to say it's a real honor on this World Food Day to be on the same panel as Professor Ratan Lal. And I really enjoyed his intervention. It's really given me a lot to think about. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tina. Dr. Shahid Mansoor?
Yeah, just one or two things. Okay. One of the important thing is about the addition of legumes. So I think that I can make one or two suggestions. One is that beside obviously there was a gap of research on soybean for 20-30 years, and we initiated, and I'm very glad that both the federal government, PRC, and Punjab government have started programs on legume, especially soybean, because it's a very important part of the feed for our poultry. The other thing is that we need to introduce mung bean. And mung bean, we have done experiments over the years where mung bean can be accommodated between rice and wheat. So it's a very good crop that can go into the rice wheat system. Another thing is that Professor Ratan Lal has very rightly said that we need to have more on area under chickpea. And this chickpea, we need to have genotypes that can be grown under irrigated areas. And I know that Professor Ikrar is very have made some struggle about that. We need to develop really a very nice breeding program for chickpea, and chickpea is something which has been accepted for hundreds of years in this region. So I think that we need to incorporate all these legumes, and then in northern areas we have a very good opportunity for common beans. With this, I thank you for inviting me for this talk. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Shahid Mansoor. Dr. Ikrar, please, over to you, and please, word of thank and close the event for today. Over to you.
I wish to express my gratitude to the participants and our great pleasure to have the speakers and presenters. Particularly, once again, all of us are delighted that Professor Ratan Lal is this year's World Food Prize winner, and we are privileged to have with us. Thank you all.
Okay, and thank you, everybody. Thank you so much. Thank you, participants, especially in Pakistan, spending time very late. So with this, I would say thank you so much. And thank you, organizers, especially Comstech, on behalf of Comstech, and all the viewers from outside Pakistan, around the world. Again, have a nice weekend. Thank you. Bye-bye. Office.